You're listening to Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast for and by Rockies fans on Rocky Mountain Rooftop. Thank you for joining us as we discuss all things baseball and Colorado Rockies. Hello and welcome to Affected by Altitude, the Colorado Rockies podcast on Rocky Mountain Rooftop, a proud affiliate of the Fans First Sports Network. I'm your host, Evan Lang, and with me, as always, is Skyler Timmons.
Yes.
And Skyler and I had to stop ourselves repeatedly from having discussions that would be excellent podcast content, because if you're unaware, going into this episode, the Colorado Rockies are delightful, beleaguered, moribund, other synonyms for bad baseball team, made some roster decisions over the weekend that are going over with a lot of people about as well as a lead balloon.
Yeah, and there's two big ones that we'll probably split into two parts of this episode and some other stuff. But yeah, just involving a lot of the roster, a trade, some injuries. A lot of this kicks off even from one injury that we'll tie into. But yeah, people aren't happy right now, Cotton. A lot of frustration. I think that's the biggest thing is frustration. Maybe more so than anger, just frustration, because it's anger's right there.
The
like,
anger's
like,
there.
like a smidgen is the frustration's just above it. But
no, it's
probably
anger
all the
for me.
yeah.
I am furious. I can't think of a time in the last two some seasons where I have been this mad at this organization, where I have been this angry with this organization. And Sally, like you said, a lot of everything that happens kicks off with one thing, and that is last week the Colorado Rockies are playing the Texas Rangers in Cactus League action. Thairo Estrada, second baseman, signed this offseason to a 1-year, $4 million deal, is at the plate against Kumar Rocker, the young rookie out of Vanderbilt. And it's John Gray's revenge is what it is. This is the revenge of the Gray Wolf, because a couple weeks ago, Michael Toglia hit a comebacker. It hit John Gray in the wrist. His wrist is broken. He's out to start the season. Kumar Rocker, on a wild fastball, hits Thairo Estrada in the wrist. Thairo stayed in the game, and then probably ill-advisedly, he stole a base and slid directly on the wrist that got hit. But that wrist is broken, non-displaced wrist fracture. He's expected to be out 4 to 8 weeks. And it's that injury that really kicks all of this off, because there were murmurings of, all right, well, the Rockies will probably slide Kyle Farmer over to second base because he can play second base. And they will look for maybe another utility guy, or they'll look for another second baseman, but they've got options inside the organization.
Mm-hmm. Or just like little minor free agents that would be dropped off of rosters this over the weekend because of opt-out clauses and all that stuff. Yeah. So there were options. The path was laid out before them. Yeah, it sucked because Thairo Estrada was having a good spring. Looked good defensively. Yep. He was getting on base.
A lot of fun watching Thairo this spring, even if he was just, a one-season kind of guy. But there were other options. There were murmurings that the Rockies could potentially reunite with Garrett Hampson if he were to be cut or left off the opening day roster for the Arizona Diamondbacks.
Patrick Saunders did say there was nothing close, and those prospects were not real.
Oh, that's a bummer. Well, and also we did find out Garrett Hampson has made the Diamondbacks opening roster, so good for him.
Yeah, the path was laid out before him, Evan, of like there were options, nothing too drastic. Yeah, it sucks, but Kyle Freeman, he can hold down the fort. An Owen Miller you could add to the roster, or an Aaron Shunk.
You just played our hand a little bit by saying the wrong name. I think you meant Kyle Farmer.
Yeah, who did I say? Kyle Farmer, Owen Miller, all these same guys. There were the options there, laid out before him with Aaron Shunk too.
Or you could even just say, you know what, nuts to it. Adel Amador, he's not quite ready, but has had a pretty solid spring overall. Have him be the opening day second baseman. And if he is struggling when Thairo gets back, then you option him back down.
Yeah. Like there's so many simple options that you could have gone with. But as such is the case with the Rockies, they constantly zig when they should have zagged, and they just
They shouldn't have even
it-
zagged.
yeah.
They were walking in a straight line and chose to barrel roll in the opposite direction for no reason by trading outfielder Nolan Jones to the Cleveland Guardians in a 1-for-1 swap for utility infielder and outfielder.
Tyler Freeman.
I wanted to call him Kyle.
Kyle Freeman.
Tyler Freeman. And this was already of a strange decision because there were so many other options. Tyler Freeman, former top prospect of the Cleveland Guardians, but hasn't been a ranked prospect since exceeding his rookie limitations in 2022, his debut season. He's got parts of 3 seasons in the bigs right now, and none of them have really been that good.
Mm-hmm.
His longest season was 2024, where he played in 118 games, and he was worth like 0.9 wins above replacement. His other 2 seasons, he didn't do that well. He was worth negative 0.3 wins above replacement. And he also played mostly center field last season. He was for pretty much the entire first half of the season and a little bit onward, he was the Guardians' primary center fielder. And he has played second base and shortstop. He's played pretty much everything up the middle. He's played third base. Frankly, he's played pretty much everything except for catcher and right field in his career so far. Okay, there's a utility guy, I guess. But in a 1-for-1 trade for Nolan Jones, who you just acquired prior to 2023, and in 2023 was worth 4 wins above replacement and finished in 4th place for National League Rookie of the Year voting, arguably should have been a finalist for National League Rookie of the Year voting, and had one bad season. Yeah, 2024 was rough for Nolan Jones in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, and a big part of that, injuries. And 1 season of injuries, and then a lot of other stuff. He put too much pressure on himself, thinking he had to be the savior of the organization, really. That now after that stellar season, then comes in, puts too much pressure on himself, deals with injuries, deals with stuff off the field. You can give him the benefit of the doubt for that 2023 or 2024 season, but for the Rockies to carry him all through the spring training, and yeah, he struggled early on, had started to warm up here as of late, at least making some more contact, looking a little bit better at the plate. But for the Rockies to immediately pivot and move on from him because a stopgap second baseman broke his wrist and they wanted a utility infielder, this move just doesn't make sense.
It's the classic Rockies panic move. They've done this late in spring training multiple times now. The most recent one is when we overpaid for Jurickson Profar.
Well, also Jake Cave last season. Trading for
Yeah,
him.
and when we traded for Jake Cave last season, and we'll talk about Jake Cave a little bit later on in the show. But the move makes no sense. You're basically saying that you have no faith that Nolan Jones will ever be able to turn it around, because it's not like the guy they got back in return is significantly younger than Nolan Jones. He's a couple months younger.
He was drafted the year after Nolan Jones.
Yeah, and the thing is, Nolan Jones at least has one very strong season in the books, and Tyler Freeman doesn't. He was a top prospect. He was even a top 100 prospect for a little bit, and he has had success in the minors. So have a lot of other guys. So have a lot of guys that the Rockies got rid of this offseason. And for a guy who is hitting in his career over 3 seasons, 223, 304, 329, with only 11 total home runs. And he's a player who has no significant power, so to speak of. Like he'll luck into a home run every now and then, but his only real above average tool is his ability to make contact. He's got a solid contact tool. That's about it. Mm-hmm. not a particularly sterling defender. Yeah, he can play a lot of positions and he can play decently, but he's not a standout in any of those. His arm is okay. His speed is okay. Everything about him in terms of his tool set is just okay. And statistically, when you combine that with his numbers and his big league career so far, he's not been a good player.
Yeah, and I know to harp on your boy, but this is what Garrett Hampson was his first 3 seasons in Colorado. And this is what Tyler Freeman is. Infielder, outfielder, can play center field. That gives him some flexibility. He's got a good hit tool. He's got some speed, but it's nothing that makes you more competitive. This doesn't make you a better team in any sense. It just fills a need. Yeah. Estrada gets hurt. You need a new utility infielder, second baseman. Okay. Yeah, there's a need, but this shouldn't be the way you go about that. And Thomas Harding writing up this news about it. Bill Schmidt talks about it later on. He says a couple of things here. The first one here with talking about Tyler Freeman, the ability to play a variety of positions. Let's say the triangle in the middle, short, second, and center gives us some versatility, said Bill Schmidt. There's a speed component. He's a contact hitter. I classify him as a baseball player.
Oh, well, thank goodness. I thought we were getting a basketball player.
Yeah, it's striking stuff there. And then later on, it says Nolan did a good job, especially in 2023, but I like some of our young guys coming, and we'll touch on this. They might not be ready right now, all of them, but that's one of our strengths. You've got to give up something to get something, and the injury to Estrada maybe sped some things up.
But he says you've got to give up something to get something, but you didn't really get anything. That's the thing. Is like, and I'm not trying to crap all over Tyler Freeman. I'm sure he's a lovely guy. I know he had some fans in Cleveland, but this does not make this team better. Arguably, it makes it worse.
Yeah, because
he's somewhat undersized. He's only 5'10", 5'11". He can put contact to the ball, and he doesn't strike out a lot. Okay, that's it. That's all he's got. And for all the other stuff that Bill Schmidt says of, oh, he can play up the middle, he's really versatile, he's fast, he can make contact. We already had a guy that we traded for last year, and his name was Greg Jones.
Yeah.
And they've already shown that they've completely given up on Greg Jones.
Yeah.
And now they're doing it, and they're bringing in another guy who is he's almost the identical player minus the strikeouts. And Jones has that plus speed.
Yeah, and like you say, it's that classic move of desperation. Now, if this trade happens and say they send somebody else, like, oh, well, we've moved Aaron Schunk or we've moved somebody else. Okay, we're like, okay, well, that's a move. But the fact that they trade Nolan Jones and the implications that has now had on the other decisions they've made just here on this Sunday that we're recording that we'll get into, that's what I think is just the most infuriating thing with all this, the most confusing and frustrating thing is that the Rockies had to felt the need to make this kind of move, a desperation move to fill a need of a utility infielder. You can buy a utility infielder by the dozen, Evan. They are everywhere. You had a couple of them in camp with you. Owen Miller can play all the infield positions, and he was practicing in center field, so he could get that versatility. Okay.
Aaron Schunk can play every infield position, has added shortstop, and you know what? I bet you could teach him to play center field in a pinch. He's fairly quick.
Yeah. It turns out athletes are pretty good. And so there's all these frustrating things, and then when they're like, that comes out because of their other guys in camp that teams were offering or looking to trade for Jones, this is the best deal you can make out of that because you were just looking to fill a need. And we need a utility infielder.
Need to be filled.
Yeah, it's just makes no sense. And best of luck to Tyler Freeman. I hope he can contribute in some way. But like we're saying, this doesn't make the Rockies better. Second base is now a big black hole offensively because Kyle Farmer is in the same boat offensively. Not a lot to write home about. And so it makes you think, well, maybe should we have just kept Brendan Rodgers then? Or all this stuff. And
Farmer's at least got a little bit more of a proven track record.
Yeah. So it's just that's what's the most frustrating thing is they do this. They say one thing and then the Rockies just pivot and do another thing.
And what's really going to hurt is that if Nolan Jones has any sort of a bounce back in 2025 or 2026, even partially returns to form, the Rockies are going to look so incredibly stupid. And it's something that I don't understand why they would even take that risk on, because we know that this is a team that is historically afraid of looking stupid by cutting bait on somebody and then having them go and play better on another team.
Yeah. And then like with Nolan Jones, I think we've talked about this before. It's okay, we've seen the really good season, 2023. We've seen a really bad season, 2024. A rule of 3 of what could 2025 hold? We've seen both ends. Who is he as a player at his core? So it feels like you're cutting him too loose too soon, because who knows what he could have done with the Rockies this year. Yeah, he's rough in spring training, but we know you take those with a grain of salt. Now, if it carries into the regular season and he's striking out a ton and there's no power and all this stuff, okay, that's when you start looking at, okay, yeah, we don't need him.
Yeah,
we can move on from him. But even then, if you don't need to trade him if it comes to that point either.
And there's plenty of other guys who have had pretty rough springs so far. You know who's looked pretty terrible this spring and the organization's been completely silent on it? Is Chris Bryant.
No, his bat speed was up to 75 miles per hour in his first bat.
He hit 1 home run and 1 double, and those are 2 of the only 3 hits he has the entire spring. Ryan McMahon's not looked particularly good this spring. Jordan Beck has not had a particularly great spring either, but he was apparently safe.
Yeah, he and Nolan Jones started heating up at the same time in camp.
And so they trade him because he wasn't looking good in the spring. He had a rough year last year. It's a panic move to fill a need that didn't need to be filled. And I don't understand it, because Nolan Jones was at least warming up and we've seen what he can do. And he is young enough that you, in my opinion, that you at least give him 1 more season. Like if he was, and this is based on everything that we know now of what the Rockies done, and we're going to talk about some of the other stuff they've done a little bit later. But if he struggles again in 2024, it's another complete bust year. Okay, move on. I get that.
Yeah.
But you didn't even really give him a chance to try and rebound.
Yeah, and because it feels like, yeah, if he's struggling in still like May or June, okay, yeah, we can understand. You're like, yeah, we designate him for assignment. We outright him to Triple-A. He's still in the organization. He can still work on some things, and there you go. But instead, you completely cut that off at the knees and get a utility infielder that you now have with the team for a little bit longer of team control. I assume, like, how many options does he have left with Freeman?
So here's the thing. The team control thing is complete bunk, because both he and Nolan Jones are set to be arbitration eligible in 2026. Jones has no options. Freeman has only 1.
Yeah, so you've gained no ground. And yeah, like, silver lining the baseball trade, like, value thingy that you can find on the internet. Yeah, it feels that this is accepted by the model. It's pretty 1-to-1 as of now. But the upside of Jones still to rebound this year, that's still, I'd rather have that and the really good defense capabilities. I'd rather have that than a random utility infielder that I could have plugged in anybody to come in and maybe slap a single every couple of days. Those guys are a dime a dozen.
Tyler Freeman is Owen Miller.
Yeah. He's early Garrett Hampson. Like, they can be helpful, but they're not game changers. You know?
And it makes no sense. And we're going to take a quick break here. And when we get back, we're going to discuss why this just makes
Even
absolutely no sense even more. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Affected by Altitude with Evan and Skyler. We're talking about the Nolan Jones trade. Nolan Jones shipped off to the Cleveland Guardians in exchange for Tyler Freeman, and why this move makes no sense. And Skyler, what I tell you is that pretty much all the murmurings on the internet, on the Purple Row boards, on Reddit, on Discord servers, was that this move really only makes sense if one Mr. Zac Veen is going to be on the opening day roster. He's going to be your opening day left or right fielder because you're clearing a space for him.
Yeah.
And it's not ideal. It's not an ideal scenario, but it clears a space. Veen has done everything right so far this spring, had a really, really good spring training, looks ready to rock and roll. Okay, that's surely what this must mean. So imagine our surprise on Sunday morning when the Rockies announced that Zac Veen has been optioned to Triple-A Albuquerque and the organization has selected the contract of non-roster invite Nick Martini.
Mm-hmm.
And it just continues to make no sense. I said on Blue Sky on Saturday, if Zac Veen doesn't make the roster after trading Nolan Jones, this move is inexcusable. And that's where we're at.
Yeah. And it's
you
like
traded Nolan Jones to make room for Nick Martini, a 34-year-old journeyman outfielder who has no sustained success at the major league level in any way, shape, or form. And I'm sure Nick is a lovely guy. And, he's been well liked by his teammates. The Rockies, his teammates in purple, have really enjoyed his presence down here at spring training. But he's 34 years old and has never really impressed in any way, shape, or form. And he's had a really good spring. But you can't take those spring numbers on their face value. You know what a really good spring last year was? Bradley Zimmer. You know who didn't make the team last year was Bradley Zimmer.
Yeah, because the Rockies traded for Jake Cave. Yeah, it's with this one. It's again like we talked about at the top of the episode. It was a straight line. Rockies are right there. Evan, they're on the 1 yard line. It's an easy, just push it through, and you got a touchdown. Okay, you've traded Nolan Jones. Yeah, we don't like it, but if this means Zac Veen gets to play, makes his big league debut, okay, awesome. We can learn to swallow that. We don't like it, but we can learn to deal with it and accept it.
Yeah, I'll live with it.
But for them to then option him and then add Nick Martini, so now that your outfield consists of Sean Bouchard, Sam Hilliard, and Nick Martini, alongside Jordan Beck and Brenton Doyle. Luckily, Beck will dive into the rest of the opening day roster. But the fact that he gets to play more, okay, that's great. Doyle, we already knew. But the fact that they add these three guys to carry all three of them, I think, is what I have the biggest problem with of them. But Martini, okay, I'm fine with that. I was fine with the idea of adding him to the roster as one of them. But once again, the Rockies have their cake and eat it too of trying to have all of them instead of just adding a Martini who, yeah, he could be helpful off the bench. That's great. But now we're looking at him being a regular starting right fielder for a team that lost 100 games in back-to-back seasons. That doesn't make this team better.
And we're shouting. It's like we understood. You and I, Skyler, and I think a lot of other Rockies fans understood the assignment this year. It's going to be a losing season. Expectations are low. So that's the ideal time to really dive into this youth movement. And Bud Black said he wanted to be a part of that when we brought him back. And Bill Schmidt said that all of these young guys would be given every opportunity to make the opening day roster. And they all talked at length over the offseason this spring about how important the youth movement is. And we're rolling now. We're we're less than a week away from opening day. And all the new guys, four of the five new guys on the Rockies roster right now are over the age of 32. Nick Martini is 34 years old.
Mm.
Sam Hilliard is over 30 years old. And Sam Hilliard has had a awful spring. And I like Sam Hilliard a lot. He's a great guy, does a lot of really cool stuff, has worked his tail off. He's been terrible this spring. He has a strikeout rate of over 60%, and he's got a very small amount of hits. And yes, 2 of those hits he has are home runs. Cool. Yay. Like that. But he has done nowhere near enough to earn a spot on this roster over Zac Veen. And when Bud Black and Bill Schmidt say one of the reasons why Zac Veen was left off the roster is because of his strikeout rate, and they say that to me with a straight face as Sam Hilliard is expected to make the opening day roster, it's ludicrous to me. And what drives me crazy, and what should be particularly insulting, honestly, is that they basically just lied to us all offseason of, we really want the young guys to have a shot. They all have an opportunity to make the opening day roster. They just have to do all the right things and have good springs. And we have multiple rookie guys who did everything right this spring. You have Zac Veen, who hit 283, 358, 483, with 2 home runs and leads all of the Cactus League in 9 stolen bases. He also has a triple and 4 doubles. He's looked great. He looks defensively solid. He looks healthy. He's exciting and fun. Option to Triple-A Albuquerque. You have Chase Dollander and Zach Agnos, 2 rookie pitchers who, Zach Agnos, even more so, sparkled this spring. He's been fantastic. He's done everything right. He's had nothing but good outings. Dollander been ripped up a couple times, but you see what he has got to offer to this team. And they come into this spring and they tell us about how exciting this youth movement is and how, these guys all have a chance. And we now see that was a lie, that they were lying to us the entire time. And we were all worried when Nick Martini started doing kind of good in spring that he was going to be Jake Cave 2.0. And here we are.
Well, funny that you say that, Evan, because, quote, Bud Black, Nick Martini showed very well. He brings an element to our club, not unlike what Jake Cave brought last year as a fan favorite that Jake Cave became. So
they learned nothing.
They
learned nothing.
And this part of it too, Evan, is it feels like the Rockies in so many cases, because I can understand. I mentioned this on social media. There is reasoning that can be valid of why they optioned Zac Veen before they traded Nolan Jones. Because, it was really between Jordan Beck, Zac Veen. Maybe they send Jordan Beck down and Zac Veen starts in his place. We're fine with either one of those guys because, at least one of them is on the roster. Ideally, we'd have both. But this way, Zac Veen would get regular playing time. But then when you trade Nolan Jones, right, there's the opportunity, like you said. But instead they go with the tried and true method because it's worked out so well for them during 6 straight losing seasons of starting a veteran outfielder who really hasn't been that good in his career. He has maybe 2 good years here in the States at best and 1 good year in Korea. They turn to him and say, well, he's our guy. Because I was fine with Martini. Like I said, I was fine with him on the roster in some capacity, but not in this capacity where he's going to be starting every day. It's the same thing we went with Jake Cave last year. We were fine with him on the roster. Okay. He can be a good bench guy, fill in, great. What? Why is Jake Cave starting day after day after day? It's ridiculous. Is this team so afraid of losing with their prospects that they figure, well, it's better to just lose with veterans? What are we doing? How do you develop better as a team if your prospects don't get an opportunity? Why does Ezekiel Tovar get full reign his rookie season with a week of big league time? How come he gets to start every day at shortstop his rookie year? But Zac Veen has to go rot away down in Triple-A because of his strikeouts. Guess who strikes out a lot too? Ezekiel Tovar. So what's with the double standard on this roster?
You know what it strikes me as
Strikes out
is that it's time and time again, and I don't know if this is Bud Black, I don't know if it's Bill Schmidt, I don't know if it's both, I don't know where this comes from, of a failure to understand what the needs of the club are at this time. 6 consecutive losing seasons, back-to-back 100-loss seasons with a third on the horizon, and pretty much everyone screaming in their faces going, we are fine with another losing season if it means we get to see the prospects, if it means we get to see a plan. And once again, they prove to us there is no plan. They have no idea what they're doing, and they don't really seem to care about developing a sort of a plan.
Yeah.
It's, well, if we plug in these veterans, maybe we'll win a handful more games, but you're still going to be 50 games under 500 out of the playoffs, nowhere near in sniffing distance of the NL West or any of the other teams, or even a wild card spot by adding these veterans.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, and yet they keep doing it again and again and again. And we had Jake Cave last year as the primary right fielder for this team, and now we're going to get that again with Nick Martini. And we have all of these young players, and what it really tells me is, if not for injuries in 2023, there is no way we would have 2-time Gold Glover Brenton Doyle.
Yeah, if Jonathan Daza was hitting, and same with Randall Grichuk, who knows how long it would have taken for Doyle to get cemented in.
Because it has been proven time and time again, the only time that most of these prospects are ever going to get a
Michael
shot
Toglia
is if their hand is forced because somebody got hurt.
Michael Toglia last year. And the Rockies, they have a very narrow-minded goal. Their thought is, we want to win. No, we want to win ball games. Okay. But it's a fundamental misunderstanding of how you go about doing that and doing it sustainably. To them, it's, we got to put the best players on the field. And in Bud Black's eyes, good players equals veteran. He has a very low tolerance for struggling rookies. And it's that misunderstanding of where wins can come from. Zac Veen, okay, yeah, he strikes out. Yeah, there's things he can work on. But why can't he work on those at the big league level as opposed to in Triple-A? His stolen bases lead to runs. He can get on base. What's the difference between that? Wouldn't he be better served getting at bats against big league pitchers on the regular as opposed to going to Triple-A? No, there's that argument. There's that argument there. And you could say that for a lot of guys between going in the minors. But with the Rockies, it's this preference of their refusal to enter a rebuild. Like, homies, you've already lost your fan base. We're not going to be upset that you're losing more and more games. We've already accepted that fact. We've accepted that this is an abysmal team that doesn't know how to win. That's going to keep sending out bloated rosters of guys over the age of 30, past their prime, hoping, well, he brings some tools that'll make us better. Then what is the point of you being a draft and develop team when the players you have drafted and developed don't get the chance?
Yeah, when the 23-year-old that has done everything right this spring, has done literally everything they have asked him to, doesn't make the cut. And it really feels like he doesn't make the cut because he's a 23-year-old who gets hot-headed and shows his emotions and has dyed hair. Over Nick Martini, the real veteran full of veteranosity, a real lunch pail kind of guy.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at our camp roster. And I'm looking at all of these guys. And frankly, I am shocked that they didn't select the contract of Diego Castillo because I thought that was coming. But you have all of these guys who, when are they going to get their fair shake? I'm looking at guys. You've optioned Drew Romo, Adele Amador, now Zac Veen, Greg Jones. All of these guys are starting the year in Triple-A Albuquerque. Yanquiel Fernandez. And some of these guys had really fabulous. Yanquiel Fernandez had a pretty great spring.
Yeah, pretty decent.
And I can buy in that you don't think he's ready yet, because Yanquiel, more than a lot of these other guys, yeah, the strikeouts are a problem, but he has got the thump.
Yeah.
And you could make an argument that maybe if you legitimately think that Zac Veen isn't ready, like you said, Skyler, then at least you roll out Jordan Beck and right. You know, he's shown promise, but he's struggled. And that's the one thing they've done right so far, is that Jordan Beck appears to be a lock to make the opening day roster.
Thank goodness he picked it up over these last couple of days, though, because
But
this could have been a
very-
scenario where he gets option too.
But it's very clear that that doesn't matter, because Zac Veen was good the entire spring, and Sam Hilliard's been bad the entire spring. And so for Jordan Beck, like, yeah, okay, Jordan Beck at least is probably going to be on the opening day roster. And boy, if anything changes between now and when this podcast comes out, oh boy. But then you at least have Nolan Jones trying to rebound in left, and you've got the Gold Glover Brenton Doyle in center. And like you said, I can definitely understand wanting to have Nick Martini on the roster as a fourth or fifth outfielder and veteran presence. The same things that would have made Jake Cave much more acceptable last season, but they just can't help themselves by throwing these guys out there to be the starters when there is no reason why. Nick Martini would not be starting games for any of the other 29 organizations in this league.
Yeah. And same with why they trade for Freeman, who was just going to be a bench guy for Cleveland. Now he's going to get a pretty regular role with the Rockies. They always do the lip service during the offseason, Evan. But when it comes down to it, this is who the Rockies are, especially in the Bud Black era. It's, hey, we got a taste of the postseason. We're going to try to do everything to get back there, but it's just diminishing returns year after year because we don't understand what got us to the playoffs. We thought it was players that had just been around for several years. No, it's because you had a borderline Hall of Famer, future Hall of Famer Nolan Arenado at third with a spectacular infield that was contributing offensively and defensively with some pretty quality players in the outfield and a stellar pitching staff that was mostly homegrown. So they so desperately want to be a draft and develop organization, Evan. But when it comes down to it, they're going back into what, honestly, it feels like what this is feels like it falls more on Bud Black's shoulders at times, that these are his decisions and his influences on how this roster is constructed, where I can understand wanting to put a prospect in a position to succeed, but what does that position look like to put them into succeed? That's what is most confusing to me when it comes to the Rockies. What does putting a prospect in a position to succeed actually look like?
And you know what's really interesting is this is probably this got mentioned in our Slack channel of Zac Veen. If he has, and this is your best shot for him to have a breakout rookie season where he ends up in Rookie of the Year voting or ends up, busting through some of those new things in the CBA that get you things like extra draft picks or compensation, this would have been your best bet. And it's stupid because you kind of hope that maybe it's just service time manipulation, but you look at it, and honestly, that's not really a thing that the Rockies have done over the last few seasons.
No.
When the rookies play, they're playing. Ezekiel Tovar now has been the starter for 2 seasons.
Yeah. It's what does a prospect who's ready to contribute, what does that look like for the Rockies? Legitimately, who of any of these guys on the team look like the player who's ready to contribute? Brenton Doyle had an awful offensive season, his rookie season. Yeah, he played some good defense. Where do we draw the line and stuff? It's just so frustrating that they just keep falling into old habits. No, I keep thinking I want to make a clip of this, but it's if you ever watch Bob's Burgers, Evan,
Yes.
and Bob is teaching Tina how to drive and they're in the parking lot. And there's the one parked car and she's just slowly going towards it. And Bob is losing his mind saying, no, Tina, just move the car. Just turn the wheel either way. Turn. Like, no, we're heading straight for it. Turn the wheel. And she's so frozen with fear, doesn't move the wheel, and just ends up just bashing into the single parked car. And that's how the Rockies feel every year when it comes to just turn the wheel. You can figure out this problem. There is a prospect that's ready to go. No, he may not be fully ready, but what the heck? Throw him into the water, see if he can swim out of the get-go and see how he develops. You can still option him later as you need to. But now it's, well, get ready for Sean Bouchard and Nick Martini getting starts in the outfield while Sam Hilliard hangs out to play center field because the Rockies. We'll get into it later. I don't want to do it right now, but I got some thoughts on the center field stuff too later. But it's just frustrating. I mean, it's just time and time again, right there in front of them, and they just veer off into random direction.
Yeah. Well,
or they crash into the parked car.
Let's take one more quick break here, and we'll keep talking about this when we get back. So don't go anywhere. For better or for worse, we'll be right back.
Oh my! Oh, hooray!
Welcome back to Affected by Altitude with Evan and Skyler. We are continuing to break down the Rockies' big weekend of nonsensical moves and frustrating theater. I don't know, Skyler. I think now is a good time to talk about your thoughts on center field, because I certainly have thoughts.
So here's my thing with center field, Evan. You have two-time Gold Glover in center field, Brenton Doyle. He's, for better or for worse, he's probably going to be out there 93, 94, 95% of the time throughout the season. You're going to be, I understand, Coors Field is big. It's a toll on the body. You need some capable center fielders who can step in as needs arise. The Rockies are treating it, though, like, how often do you expect Sam Hilliard to actually play in center field? How often during the week do you expect him to play center field?
Maybe once, if that.
Because they keep pointing out, oh, well, he has the experience, and we need, guys to that combo gives us so much versatility of guys with experience. Here's what Thomas Harding writes. The question becomes Hilliard, who struggled offensively this spring, but last year was a revelation when he posted an 812 OPS in 58 games. Yes, Sam Hilliard was good last season in that bench role, playing in the outfield. We're not complaining about that. A Doyle-Hilliard combination would give the Rockies two players who can cover ground at Coors Field, no small feat, experience doing so. They make it seem like Hilliard is going to be playing there way more than we expect him to. I understand the Rockies wanted to rest guys more this year, but still, you want to put your best guys out there 100% of the time when you're able to. But even then, on occasion, like we're saying with Sam Hilliard, you're telling me Jordan Beck or a Zac Veen couldn't have slid in there once or twice a week as needed to play center field? Like, they're experienced center fielders. Beck maybe a little more so than Veen, but Veen came up as a center fielder. They're experienced outfielders. Yet the Rockies act like it's such an anomaly that you need a hyper-specific bench guy to play center field.
Yeah. And it is really weird because, like, Hilliard has not been good this spring. But yes, he can play center field. But they started putting Veen in center field sort of towards the end of the spring, and I legitimately thought that meant, oh man, he's got to have a roster spot really close to being locked down over Sam Hilliard or something because they've got him playing in center field. But they are so weird about this. Is like, the smart option would have been you can have Veen or Beck fill in center field for the rare day that Brenton Doyle needs a day off, and then you throw Sean Bouchard or whomever in the corner for whichever one of them is going to fill in. But now they've got another guy who can play center field in Tyler Freeman,
Yeah.
These hyper specific super utility guys, and it's baffling. Like we are just podcast hosts and writers, but it's like we can at least formulate some sort of a roster plan that the Rockies never seem to be able to do, in terms of like, all right, well, let's who platoons where, what makes sense, who's the best to have on this roster right now. Why can we do that, but the people that are getting paid to do this can't? And it brings me back to Bud Black, who says he wants to be part of the solution and that he's excited for the youth movement, but clearly not. Or Bill Schmidt, who goes around saying it's like all of these young guys have a chance to make the roster. That clearly wasn't true either. Because you have these kids that have done everything that you asked them to do to make the roster.
Yeah. And it's like a lot of these players don't have to come out of spring training a perfect refined product. They can still develop with the big league team. You take like a Zac Veen, like we mentioned earlier. Well, could he would the development process be more beneficial playing every day in the big leagues? Okay, yeah, he struggled in his little bit of time in the batting average department with the isotopes at the end of last season, but the power was there. Everything else was there, and he was coming back from injury anyway. So,
and a good player never stops developing. Even as a big leaguer, they change and adjust and adapt throughout their entire careers. Like, look at Charlie Blackmon at age 37 versus Charlie Blackmon at age 29. They're different players because Charlie adapted and adjusted. Look at Brenton Doyle, who was making mechanical adjustments to his swing on the fly in the middle of a big league season.
mm-hmm.
And you mean to tell me that you don't trust your coaching staff to help these kids do any of that over the course of the season? Because if you don't think your coaching staff can develop these young guys, then it sounds like you need a new coaching staff.
Yeah, or you need better players. Like, it's one or the other. And that's what gets me when, well, we'll probably get into the unofficial 26-man roster that Bud Black announced here on this Sunday. But you spend all this camp, like you're saying, oh, the young guys, they'll be given the opportunities. We're ready for this youth movement. We got a lot of exciting young guys. That's fine. It's when you have these legitimate open spots that you create yourself, especially. And if there were more cemented guys in that outfield, Nolan Jones left. Okay, maybe Jordan Beck had a really good year last year. He's already penciled in, ready to go in right field. Okay, we're not that upset. Like, yeah, Veen had a good camp. He won the player development MVP award, the Abby Greer Award, which, by the way, is only handed out to the prospects who had the best spring from a developmental standpoint. So it's the MVP, but not in the way we think it is. Jordan Beck won it last year, Evan, and he didn't make the roster. But if you're going to go through the spring, if you're more cemented, okay, he gets optioned. Okay, that's whatever. Like, it's good to see he's getting close. He'll be up sooner rather than later once one of these other guys struggles. But when they're wide open and the other alternatives is a 34-year-old that kind of fizzled out from injuries last year and, barely made his first opening day roster last year, that's the alternative. We would be mad if the supporting cast was maybe better. But when it's already a depleted farm system and all the talent is in the minors, why aren't we putting the best players in the system on the big league roster to create the best team?
And it frustrates me because I really do feel like after all of this, it was all a farce. Of, if I know what I knew now, I would have been calling out everybody along the way that none of these guys really stood a chance of making the opening day roster. not Veen, not Agnos, not Dolander, none of them, that it was all a load of baloney. And we look at who is on this unofficial 26-man roster, and it makes no sense.
It's just more of the same. The changes don't come. It's the same, through and through. It's basically the same roster. You
I
can
would
shift
argue
a
that it's
couple of
getting
faces.
worse.
Yeah, you can shift a couple of the faces, but they're basically players we've already seen on this team before. What is Kyle Farmer if not just another version of a guy like a Harold Castro? The super utility infielder that can make some contact. What is Tyler Freeman if not a version of Garrett Hampson and other guys we've seen? What is Nick Martini but just Jake Cave? It's just different names, same players. And the Rockies just spin the wheel. They're just spinning their tires in the mud, Evan, and not going anywhere.
Like, we're about to go into opening day with 6 outfielders on the 26-man roster.
Yeah, we might as well start rolling down this roster then, Evan.
But you'd think I love utility players. I'm a certified Garrett Hampson fan.
But sometimes you need a primary.
I'm not happy with any of this. And it's like I said, it's like, you know who I much rather had than a guy who is like Garrett Hampson? I would have rather just had Garrett Hampson at this point.
Why get the generic brand when you can go get the name brand?
For cheaper.
Butter, it's not. That one's my favorite.
In this circumstance, the name brand would have been substantially cheaper than the price you paid for the store brand.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing, is like, the Rockies are self-proclaimed bargain bin shoppers. They love to find the bargains and the steals, and they end up paying more than they need to for these. It's like when they gave Jurickson Profar $8.75 million, and he was terrible.
Yeah, as somebody who is a cheapskate when it comes to buying stuff, because, hey, I don't have money, I can tell you I would much rather be able to buy some of the better stuff, afford some of that better stuff, because, the generic, the bargain bin stuff is helpful, and it can be good. It's nowhere near as good as things could be.
And also, as someone who shops, who likes to buy the store brands, there are some things that you always pay the extra money for when it comes to buying the name brand. It's like your peanut butter and your pasta sauce.
We just get Kroger pasta sauce. That stuff's pretty good.
Yeah, but I'm talking like, your Great Value brand or whatever.
Walmart brand. They're not sponsoring us.
The cheapest of the cheap, like the store brand value peanut butter is never going to be as good as a nice creamy jar of Jif or Skippy.
The thin wheats compared to wheat thins. Which one's the name brand?
Yeah, but some of them are fine. It's like when you buy breakfast cereal, you can get some Toasted Oats. Toasted Oats are fine.
Oh, no, you buy some Cheerios, weirdos.
Really, I like Toasted Oats. Or here's a better one. I always rock with the Marshmallow Mateys over Lucky Charms.
Marshmallow Mateys.
I like Marshmallow Mateys, okay? But
it brings some bad memories from my childhood.
I'm sorry.
I got sick of that cereal.
I'm sorry to dig up the bad memories. Sorry, the Rockies dug up the bad
I had a brother
memories.
that would eat them, and he would, because like the ship mateys, that cereal just gives you the worst breath, and then he would burp in my face.
Ew.
Yeah, that's typical Big Brother stuff.
That's not the cereal's fault, though.
No, it's that cereal's fault for being just nasty. But this is beside the point. From how ship mateys traumatized me as a child.
But the Rockies try and be thrifty without understanding the essentials of it, and end up paying more for less. And that's how you've got, they're talking up Chris Bryant, who has not played that much this spring. And when he has played, he's been bad, about how, he's feeling the best. He's feeling so great and he's ready and he's excited. And it's like, we all know what's going to happen.
He felt good last year at this point.
Yeah. But we might as well dive into what this projected 26-man roster
from the mouth of Bud Black
is going to look like. We know the catchers. It's Jacob Stallings and Hunter Goodman. One of the interesting things that they've said is that Hunter Goodman is going to play basically exclusively catcher to start the season. No more first base, no more outfield. He is a catcher through and through. Okay. I actually kind of like that. Let him focus on the one position. In the infield, not a ton of surprises. You've got Michael Toglia starting at first base. You've got Ryan McMahon at third. You've got Ezekiel Tovar at short. Kyle Farmer will look to slot in occasionally at second base, along with Tyler Freeman, the new arrival. Chris Bryant is your designated hitter.
And very, very rare outfielder.
They haven't put him as a position player a single time this spring.
They put him in at first base. That's it.
Which does at least give me a little bit of hope, but
with as many outfielders as we're about to list off, there's no need for him to ever play the outfield.
Including Tyler Freeman, who I previously mentioned for the infield, the Rockies are expected to carry 6 outfielders on opening day, which is already ridiculous. But it's going to be Brenton Doyle. It's going to be Jordan Beck, Sam Hilliard, Nick Martini, Tyler Freeman, and Sean Bouchard.
With Bouchard and Martini able to occasionally play first base as well.
Which Bouchard has at least some experience playing both.
That's his natural position. That was what he was drafted as.
But Martini has barely played any corner infield throughout his entire. He's a corner outfielder.
He's a corner outfielder.
And
everybody will cycle through DH as well with Bryant.
At the very least, they've also put an end to this. Michael Toglia will also play the outfield thing. Toglia is the starting first baseman.
Yes.
And he's had a pretty good spring. Cool. Yeah. Okay.
He's done the big toe has done his thing.
Didn't he say that he does not actually like the Big Mike nickname?
Because it's his uncle's name. Spilly was talking about that during a broadcast. Like, he doesn't hate it. It's just because his uncle's name is Big Mike. And so I think he prefers Togs. But he doesn't hate Big Mike, but he prefers something else. So naturally, the broadcast
will not nothing stop but calling him Big Mike.
Will not shut up about calling him Big Mike.
Here on Rocky Mountain Rooftop, we prefer Big Mongoose, but if we ever get him on an interview, we need to talk to him about that. So, Michael, how do you feel about Big Mongoose?
He just lays out just profanity laden, just rant against us. You mothers!
You heard it here first, folks. So there's your position players. Zac Veen should be on this list. I'm sorry.
Nolan Jones should be on this list.
Yeah, if you traded Nolan Jones, Zac Veen should be on this list. And now we've got neither of them.
Anyways, Juan Brito, he's going to be pretty good for the Cleveland in the future.
Yeah, he was apparently, I don't know if they've made any official announcement. He was apparently pretty darn close to winning the second base job with the departure of Andres Jimenez.
Yeah, he got optioned like a week or so ago.
Did he?
He had home runs. His average was like 200.
I really liked Juan Brito when he was with the Rockies organization. My nickname for him was Juan Briante.
Anyways, yeah, let's look at. I'm going to look him up real quick. Continue on with what we're talking about with
the Rockies are expected to roll out a 4-man rotation to start the season with Kyle Freeland, Antonio Senzatela, Herman Marquez, and Ryan Feltner. Austin Gomber will start the season on the injured list. He's already ramping up. We don't think he's going to be out for too long.
April
Rockies-
8th against the Athletics is his projected next start.
Okay,
When
so
season starts.
missing basically a week and a half to start the season.
15
That's not
days.
bad at all. So you've got that. It's been announced that Bradley Blaylock has made the team. He was one of the people that I do legitimately think earned a spot this year. Blaylock, will function largely as the long reliever in the bullpen, but can make starts as needed. This weekend, Jake Woodford was released and Diego Castillo was reassigned, and he will be starting the season with Triple-A Albuquerque. All right, not a ton of surprises there. I still think Dolander did enough to make the opening day roster, but there's not a lot of surprises in that rotation. Okay, fine. Your bullpen, outside of Bradley Blaylock, is the long reliever, is going to be Jake Bird, Angel Chivie, Seth Halverson, Scott Alexander, Jimmy Herget does appear to have made the team, Luis Peralta, Tyler Kinley, and Victor Vodnik.
Mm-hmm.
Not a ton of surprises there either. I think we could have seen a little bit more of a shakeup if it hadn't been for Jeff Criswell, who needs Tommy John surgery. But in terms of pitching, there's not a whole lot of surprises. Like I said, I still think Zach Agnos and Dolander had done enough to make the opening day roster, but they will both instead start in Triple-A Albuquerque.
Yeah, for like Dolander, it's that opposite conversation with like Zac Veen, where we had already talked about it coming into spring training. There really wasn't room for him, and especially then after Gomber's injury, where he's only going to be out for like a week and a half. There was just no point in carrying him when Blaylock, who also was already on the 40-man and had a good year and could work out of the bullpen. There's just no spot in that rotation for Dolander. And the inexperience showed. Like, yeah, we love strikeouts, but he was also issuing a good amount of walks, was getting hit, giving up home runs. And so we saw the stuff, but the inexperience was also showing. And Dolander is one of those where you don't necessarily need to rush him right now. Now, 2026 opening day roster, heck yes, absolutely. But he can be better served. No, he can still get some work down there in AAA and get acclimated to pitching at altitude.
I just worry.
Well, he might have the same results pitching at Coors. It's all the same.
But
you don't need him. That's the thing, is you already had the full rotation.
Yeah.
Nobody was getting kicked out of that rotation because everybody else aside from Herman has had a pretty decent spring.
And
even
for
with
the
Ryan Farmer
bullpen,
struggling a bit.
For the bullpen, for me, the only guy who I would have removed from this bullpen, probably Jimmy Herget. I'm not sold on him, but it's just where we're at. I would have switched him out for Zach Agnos, but
you can at least I can see the mix the Rockies wanted to go with. Now you have your three semi-veterans, and then Jake Bird I guess fits into that category too, and then the rest are the young guys. So
yeah, I do wish that Jaden Hill had made the roster, though. I do agree, especially when he is so new to being a reliever. He just switched into being a reliever last year, that he's got more to work on. I am very relieved that Seth Halverson and Luis Peralta will both be on the opening day roster. I was a little worried about that.
Halverson not so much. Peralta, yes, but once they optioned Lucas Gilbreth, Peralta's spot was pretty clear. Though the Rockies were determined to carry two lefties, Evan. They did not want to just leave Scott Alexander as your only one.
I mean, it's better than having no lefties like they've done in previous seasons. But, that's where we're sitting right now for the opening day roster. It'll be made official at some point this week as the Rockies near first pitch on the 2025 season against the Tampa Bay Rays at Steinbrenner Field.
As everybody drew it up. Also, Juan Brito, he's gone 7 for 37 in 14 games in spring training. 1 double, 4 home runs, 7 RBI, 8 strikeouts, 2 walks. At a 189 average, 231 on base, 541 slugging. So the slugging was there. Everything else, not so much.
I used up all my energy being mad. Like,
hey, at least the Rockies traded Nolan Jones for Tyler Freeman and Juan Brito. Or traded Juan Brito and Nolan Jones for Tyler Freeman.
oh, and don't forget that we traded a pretty solid catching prospect in Cody Huff last year for Cal Quantrill, who's also no longer with the team. So essentially, the Rockies traded Nolan Jones, Juan Brito, and Cody Huff for Tyler Freeman.
There you go. One good season of Nolan Jones and Tyler Freeman.
And
and a good first half from Cal Quantrill.
I still stand by it that if Nolan Jones even remotely bounces back this season, this move is even more infuriating. Nothing about what they have done here makes any sense.
Nope.
And it just proves to me that this organization right now has no idea what they are doing.
Yet. And to summarize how Evan feels after this episode.
Oh, he's been waiting to use. He's been waiting to use that all episode.
It's true.
It stinks. It stinks. It stinks.
Yes, Mr. Sherman. Everything stinks.
Anyways, where can the folks find you, Evan?
You can find me on Blue Sky at Evan Lang 27. I've had some choice thoughts on Blue Sky over the last couple days. I would appreciate a follow on there. You can also find me writing the Monday Rock Pile over on purplerow.com. And you can also find me writing the weekly Pebble Report over on purplerow.com. Remember that you can find Rocky Mountain Rooftop on all of your favorite podcasting platforms. This includes Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and you can always catch the video version of our show over on youtube.com. You can find Rocky Mountain Rooftop on basically all social media platforms, including youtube.com, at Rocky Mountain Rooftop. That's at ROCKYMTN Rooftop.
Yeah, you can find me over on Twitter at Skyler Timmons or over on Blue Sky STimmons13, WSKY.social. And then, yeah, writing Wednesday Rock Piles over at Purple Row and also writing stuff over for fansfirstsportsnetwork.com.
Thank you so much for listening to us kind of rant this episode. Honest, the feelings are pretty raw coming into this episode because it's basically right after all of this had happened, and I was expecting to be a little calmer, and no, I'm very frustrated.
But hey, Evan, the next time we talk, games will have been played.
Yeah,
the regular season will be underway.
We'll have the first, depending on when we record, we might have that first full series of the 2025 season under our belts against the Tampa Bay Rays.
There we go.
And we'll have an official 26-man roster at some point this week, basically putting what Bud Black has put out there on paper.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you so much for listening to us. It's going to be a long season, and we appreciate you hanging with us through a very long off season. But we made it. It's for better or for worse. It is time for 2020. Goodness. It is time for 2025 Colorado Rockies baseball here on Affected by Altitude. Skyler, hit him with it.
Looks like we've made it. We lost each other along the way, but we made it, Evan. Farewell!
The true baseball was the friends we made along the way.
It's true. This has been Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast with Rocky Mountain Rooftop, a proud affiliate of the Fans First Sports Network. Catch new episodes every Monday on wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Be sure to follow us on YouTube as well for video versions of the show.